right, so here I am to talk about OBX4, season 4 of Outer Banks, however you want to slice it. And I just want to get right into it, man, because this is such an unfortunate series of events that we've been going through. And the thing is, first off, if you like this season, there is nothing wrong with that. I'm gonna make sure I say this before every video. I am not giving the opinion, I am giving my opinion, okay? I'm not telling you how you should feel about it. This is just how I personally feel about what I watch and experience myself. If you feel differently, there's nothing wrong with that. You're not weird for that. It is what it is. Different strokes, different folks. You know how the sayings go. It's not your bad. It's not my bad. It's nobody's bad. The whole purpose of entertainment is people have different thoughts about it. So let me just make that very clear right out the gate. So where do I want to start? I don't even know. I really don't. So first things first, let me just say that as far as my history with Outer Banks, for those that don't know, I've already put out a review on season 1 and 2 in one video, and I put out a separate video on season 3. So if you guys want to know how I feel about the earlier seasons, you can go check those videos out. I don't have a lot of videos on my channel, so it's not going to take that much scrolling to find them. And plus, I just showed the thumbnail, so it'll be easy to find. And plus, I'll probably just link them in the description or whatever, just to make it easier for some people as well. But for those that don't know, season 1 and 2 I absolutely loved. It was some of the best teen show stuff I've seen in quite some time. It looked like it had all the potential to be just a legendary show, one of the greatest that we've seen, especially in the 2020s. I thought the show had a lot of potential. I thought sky was the limit for a show like this. I thought there was no way they could mess up a show like this with the not the complex, but with the character bonds that we have in this show. And then season 3 happened. And then I started to realize that, this show is going in a direction that I'm not a big fan of. It seems like this show is leaning more into just the action side of it, the whole big, treasure hunting stuff outside of just focusing on the characters and them growing up in this weird society that they live in the Outer Banks. And unfortunately for me, that's when I kind of started to tap out, and that's when I started to realize that, this show might just be heading in a direction that's just personally not for me. Like I said, if you don't think the same way, if you think that this whole action stuff that they're doing is the bee's knees, if you think this is your jive, then cool. Cool. I don't want to discredit that, but me personally, this is not why I got into the show. I don't want to keep speaking on things that I said in previous videos, but in season 1 and 2 I did say that the best part about this show is the bond that these characters have between each other and the banter that they have with each other, and a lot of the comedic moments they hit, because you could tell these group of people really fuck with each other. And even though that still seems to be the case based off things that I've seen, it does seem like this show, I don't know if it's more so that the actors are ready just to move on to something else, if they have other things on the horizon and they're kind of ready just to check out themselves from the show, but it does seem like they themselves as actors are kind of maybe starting to get tired of the same song and dance. And that's not just me projecting, that's just based off just how it seems like things are starting to progress. Now, here's the thing. First off, let me start off by saying that, or let me address the elephant in the room. Spoiler alert, JJ dying in this season, that kind of just perfectly capped off why I think this show is just turned into something completely different. Because here's the thing with this show, right? Around season 3, it started to seem like this show had a really bad job with pacing. It seemed like this show never really lets things flesh out. They kind of present problems and they get solved very quickly, and there's no overall growth from that because it happens so fast. It's like whiplash. And not only that, a lot of what happens in this show doesn't seem to change the characters that much. If I were to tell you right now, Kiara from season 2 is really no different than Kiara in season 4. Is that really that surprising? I mean, of course you could say at the very end of the episode when she said JJ would want revenge, which that's just whatever. Get the fuck out of here. But it's, I don't know, I'm so upset. I'm really upset. It's hard for me to really talk about it because this show I thought could be so much more than what it turned into. It did. And I know people are going to bring up the fact that apparently the director said that they planned off killing JJ since the beginning. That's always been the plan. Listen, it's their show. They wrote it, so I'm not going to tell them that they're lying to me. But what I will say is that we've seen firsthand before directors and producers and actors and writers come out and say one thing and be caught lying about it. So just because they say they planned on killing him off since the beginning, listen, of course at the end of the day they haven't shown a lie in the past, so you can only but take their word for it. Even though I could maybe find somewhere where they didn't say, well, let me not say, they said something along the lines of like that whole Kiara and JJ relationship would probably never really happen, but then it ended up happening. But I don't want to hold myself to that because I don't know for a fact that that's what happened. But I remember I could have swore I seen something where they said something like that back around season like 2 or something like that, or something where they were getting tired of like Kiara being passed around. But whatever. But like I said, I don't want to hold myself to that, so I could be off with that. All I'm saying is just because they say something doesn't mean that's true. And based off how he died in this show, I would be inclined to believe that that was absolute cap. And let me say this. This is me cutting them slack, because if they did plan on killing JJ since the beginning of the show, and that's how they got to his death, and that's how his death was executed, then that's just terrible writing. So I'm actually giving them more credit by saying I don't think that's the case. I think they got caught up in, the whole drama that was going on with apparently Madison and Rudy, which, some people I feel like are over exaggerating it. Some people are kind of putting a little bit more sauce on it. Do I think there was something there? Obviously, we can see the scenes. Like, I'm not stupid. I'm not trying to make it seem like their drama completely ruined the show, but I'm not stupid. I can see when actors clearly don't want to shoot scenes together, and it looks really weird when things are getting cut back and forth. I can show the scene right here for people that don't know what I'm talking about. It's the scene that everybody has been calling out recently on social media that shows that the energy is just weird. There was another scene as well where just the lack of emotion, which you could chalk it up just to just bad acting. There's also another scene where they just had this weird exchange that ended on a handshake, but they're supposed to be these lovers that finally found each other after such a long time of years of being friends, and they're end game, and this is how they it's just a lot of weird shit going on between these two that I wouldn't be surprised if one of them wanted off of the show and one of them got their wish. I just wouldn't be surprised by that. I'm not trying to put that out there in the air because I don't know. Who knows what it could come out years down the line after they have no reason to lie, and they could still stick to their guns and being we planned on killing him off. I just don't know if I'm ever gonna really buy that, just because I know actors and directors and producers and writers have lied before. But here I am going off too much and not discussing the show itself. And that's because there really isn't much to discuss with the show. It's basically the same story that we've been told before. A problem arises, they barely escape, rinse and repeat. Does that sound familiar? Because it sounds like the last couple of seasons, right? And at no point, and the only redeeming factor for me off of the fact that JJ did in fact die was the fact that these kids, I guess, because I guess they showed at the end of the season that apparently he's 20, so we can assume that all of these characters in the show now are around late teens, early 20s.
Push the goddamn button! Push the goddamn button! You heard what she said.
And I haven't even really gotten into what's going on in the show itself. And that's just because there really isn't what can I say? It is legitimately the most basic writing, basic resolution. A problem arises, they barely escape, they don't learn anything from it, rinse, repeat. It is by far some of the most egregious pacing. Shit goes, it hits you like whiplash how many times a problem happens and things get resolved. They don't never let things breathe. And maybe it's because they're rushing to season 5 and that's what it is. But the whole thing with them capturing the gold and then all of that just ends up being absolved over the course of one episode, that was crazy. The fact that they actually were able to open up their own shack, and that only lasted about 2-3 episodes before I ended up deciding that, it turns out you guys actually didn't buy the land properly. It's just so much of that, so much of just some good is happening. Okay, let's turn it on its head. Let's not let things breathe for a little bit. Let's not let them maybe have the Poglandia thing for a little bit longer. No, we have to nip that in the bud, because God forbid we have some lightheartedness in a show like this, where a big part of the reason why so many people fell in love with it was the lightheartedness. No, we want to be a gritty action show with teenagers now, because that's, whatever. I don't know. But even still, it is not a lot to chew on with this season. And as far as next season, I can almost tell you what's probably going to happen. And I really hope this doesn't happen. But if they do this silly shit where they have the whole season centered around them chasing down JJ's dad, finding JJ's dad, him showing remorse, saying he didn't he didn't really want to kill JJ. He regrets it, and them realizing that they've gone too far and they aren't going to kill his dad, and they end up handing him over to the police, and then they all live happily ever after. Like, if that's if they pull some shit like that, and then it ends off and turns out that John B the whole time was narrating to his son, and then you see like Pope and Cleo come out of their house with their kid or whatever, and then it sets up that spin-off where it's gonna be like OBX New Generation or whatever. Like, if they do that silly ass shit, man, I give up. I give up. I will not be tapping into New Generation Outer Banks. I will not. This world is not that interesting. It is not that captivating enough for it to happen. And here's the thing. I don't even need to get into like the fact that they're trying to be such an action show, but even the action isn't done well, because that's just a given, right? We have moments where the bad guys are chasing them. And here's the thing. They commit almost every sin that can happen when you are trying to do bad guys versus good guys. Bad guys have guns, good guys have no guns. We have a moment where they get chased down a one-way hallway and the bad guys have terrible aim. Okay, that happens in a lot of action movies. Some great action movies have moments where the bad guys just have horrendous aim. Okay, we also have a moment where they shut a wooden door behind them, a door that can get penetrated by bullet holes. And we have both, I think, who was it? Was it Pope and I believe Jay? No. Yeah, I think it was Pope and JJ. It was Pope and somebody. It was either Pope and JJ or Pope or I forget. It was either Pope and JJ or Pope and Rafe. I forget which ones. But we have a moment where they get behind the door. They're the last two to get behind the door. The bad guys start firing through the wooden door. You see bullet holes coming out of the wooden door. They still were able to shut the wooden latch. I'll show a clip of it right here. Nobody got hit? Nobody? Okay, whatever. We have the moment where John B gets caught dead to rights, literally less than a foot away from a bad guy, has a gun pointed right in his chest. Guess what? The gun jams, because of course it does. We also have Pope, shown to be the geek, never held a gun in his life, has a moment where he has one bullet left. He has the pressure of having one bullet left, getting chased by a mercenary with his girlfriend next to him, bleeding out, shot in her shoulder. He's laying down, leaned back. One bullet, by the way, one in the chamber. He notices Pope at the corner of his eye. He turns his head. Pope shoot? Of course, perfect aim. One in the chamber, perfect aim. It doesn't matter. He got him against a mercenary. Mercenary versus a 19-year-old kid who's never held a gun before, that had one bullet in the chamber against a mercenary that had a full magazine. Pope got the jump on him. He killed him. One in the chamber. Now, here's the thing. If these things were just isolated, it's whatever. I don't care. But when you compound all the stuff like this in one sequence, not just one season, one sequence, this all happened over the course of one episode. It's like, how are you trying so hard to be an action show, but like you commit every egregious thing that you can do when it's a good guy versus a bad guy in these type of action sequences. You do everything wrong. Everything. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to just get all negative, because I do realize there are some good things about this show. Season 4, episode 6, the first episode of part 2. That opening sequence with JJ, when he finally, I guess you could say, fully snapped and he incited the riot, it was some cool shots in that. It was. And overall, OBX, I think for the most part, throughout since season 1, always has cool cinematography. I'm always a big fan of how they just they seem to really capture that area, just that Outer Banks in general. They capture it very well. I don't want to just be super negative. I think the cinematography in this show is always top tier. I know a lot of people have gripes about the fact that they just blue tint every night scene instead of just shooting in the night, because apparently that's how they get by it. They just, put the blue filter over it. The blue can be a bit egregious at times. I'm not mad at it, but like I said, the visuals in this show are top tier. Don't get me twisted on that. I think the visuals are top tier. The effects, for what it's worth, are also decent. They're not nothing to they're not terrible. They're just decent. I do think the brief moments that we get of comedic timing and just the comedy and the banter in general can be good as well. I don't want to make it seem like this show has no redeeming qualities about it. I do think there are certain elements of the show where it's okay, I'm into this. The whole relationship between Sarah and John B, I'm into it. The relationship between Pope and Cleo, I'm into it. The relationship between Pope and his parents, especially his dad, that whole last couple episodes, I like that. I do. I liked how, a lot of the stuff that they do are catching up to them. Pope had reached a point where He had to go to the military. He doesn't have a choice. I like how JJ reached a point where he kind of bit off more than he could chew now. He has to sit down for a little while. Like, I like how the characters in the show are facing the consequences of their actions. But here's the thing. Yes, the show is showing that they're still kids at the end of the day, and there's still going to be consequences for the stuff they're doing, and they're just not allowed to freely do these things. But the resolution to that all the time is, oh, they just run away. They run away, and then somehow they come back and have immunity. And that is just like, whatever. Like, I just don't know where we go from here. I really don't. I struggle to find how the show fell off as deep as it did. And the thing is, I love a lot of these characters in this show, albeit them not changing much over the course of the show, really at all. Like, it seems like they all are suffering from the same mistakes that they made back in like season 2. I still like the characters. They're likable characters. I do think they are likable characters. Even JJ. And of course you could say maybe it's because they handed the season to him on a silver platter. I think he put up the best performance in this entire show just off of episode 6 alone. I do. I think Drew Starkey is also incredible in this show. As far as Chase, Madeline, and Madison, I mean, I saw a time cut with Madison Bailey that was kind of just like, Madeline Klein, I'll be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with her game. Chase Stokes, he was in Uglies, which was terrible, but you know, it was more so just like that. Just movie in general was kind of terrible from the start, so it's whatever. Madison Bailey also, time cut, the plot itself was just pretty stupid. She was just fine in it. Madeline Klein, like I said, not really familiar with her outside of Outer Banks. I did see Glass Onion, but outside of that, at least Chase Stokes and Madison Bailey, I've seen like a couple movies they've been in outside of Outer Banks, just a few they've done. JD, I haven't really seen outside of Outer Banks, but he seems like he does have potential. And plus, he's real young too as well. So all of them are fairly young as far as acting is concerned. Like, they definitely have room to improve. I think Rudy and Drew are already kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if Rudy and Drew over the next like year or two get in something that gets like, you know, Oscar buzz or something like that. Like, I really do think they are that charismatic as actors. I really do. I do think they are really well. Of course, the other characters, they're more so just like, you know, they play just normal teenagers, so they don't really have opportunities for their, you know, I guess, acting bag to really come out like that. So I'm reserving judgment. I'm not saying they're terrible actors. I'm just saying, compared to like somebody like Drew, somebody like Rudy, that's actually, you know, playing these characters that take a certain level of charisma, take a certain level of just like going there in order for them to like perform well. They've been able to execute it well, and I am very excited to see what they do outside of this, especially Rudy, who, you know, like I said, I'm not too familiar with his work either. Definitely excited to see what he does outside of Outer Banks. I heard that he does a lot of short films and stuff like that, so he seems like he could be in that creative mindset. Definitely interested to see what he does after this. Same thing with Drew Starkey. I know he has a movie coming out with the old James Bond. I forget his name. I feel bad because I forgot his name, but they do have a movie coming up called Queer that looks like it's going to be like really interesting. I know the early thoughts on that are that a lot of people are saying like that's going to be the one that's going to start putting him in different rooms. But I do think the rest of this cast is talented. I love the relationships between them. As far as the spinoffs, I will not be tuning in. As far as what's going to happen with the rest of the show after it ends, as far as the spinoffs, I don't know. I really don't. Like I said, I am not tuning in for a new generation Outer Banks, and I really can't think of a character in this show that's like, if they had a spinoff, I'm really locking in for. Like, I can't, I'm struggling to find one. I know apparently Austin North, he was talking about like how a Topper spinoff would be interesting, and I will say, like, a lot of people I saw some people were killing him for that. I wouldn't be mad at an Outer Banks show from the perspective of a kook, just because I know they probably get really wild as far as with the booger sugar and stuff like that. Like, I do think there is a way to tell a compelling story with like the rich and wealthy. I mean, it's like, I don't know why I just said that when we have other shows that very clearly show that you can tell stories about the rich and wealthy that are compelling and that are top tier. Do I think that Outer Banks can get the writing that can explore that? Yeah, it's a different story, but yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see. Now, I will be tuning into season 5. I am not. I don't know. And as far as this video, I'm sorry if this video doesn't seem as structured as my other ones. I promise you, I'm not usually like this, but this show just, it throws me for a loop. Now, as far as grade rating, I don't know, man. I guess we'll give this show like a D+ this season. I'm probably never gonna check back into the season. Like, I don't know. I'll definitely, I'll rewatch season 1 or 2 at some point, and just maybe pretend like season 2 is the ending of the show. Sometimes, like, I feel like that's what's gonna happen after season 5 ends. Like, whenever I want to go back and watch Outer Banks, I'll just go back and watch season 1 and 2 and just pretend that was the end of the show. But as far as just the rest of it, it's not good. It's just not good anymore. It lost its luster, and it's cool. It is what it is. I do like the fact that they want to end it at season 5. They don't want to beat a dead horse, even though Netflix is going to make them beat a dead horse with the whole spinoffs, that thing that they're probably going to end up executing. But first 2 seasons, matter of fact, you know what? That's probably what I'm going to start doing now. That's what I'm going to start telling people. You know what? Check the show out. Watch season 1, enjoy season 1. Watch season 2, enjoy season 2, and pretend the show just ended right after that. And your overall experience on the show will be a lot better than the people like us that's, kind of pained ourselves through the later seasons, unfortunately.